Hey there, Harmony here, and today I want to talk about undoing absolutism in the body. So, this is particularly for my trauma informed therapists, coaches, teachers, and healers out there. Anybody who is helping direct people's bodies or helping to facilitate movement. Um, I really want to talk about this concept of creating space to do less, be that taking breaks or doing less reps. But I want to talk about the concept of doing less and how you can help your students and clients tap into that for themselves and know that they can make those choices to attend to their needs in real time and why it's important. So, a little bit of backstory. Growing up, I was really terrified of being anything less than perfect. For me, overachieving was the norm, and perfect grades, perfect attendance, all those things came with this expectation. But on the inside, I was just in hell. and most of my teenage years were marked by a really severe eating disorder. And this eating disorder was how I coped with the stress of unprocessed childhood trauma as well as abuse. So, aspiring towards this idea of perfection brought me a sense of control in my life, but it also trained me to be extremely hard on myself. And I'm sharing this because until just a few short years ago, um, I would cringe and contract at the idea of doing less. It, first of all, felt foreign to me, felt foreign in my body. I was like, what is this? And then the second part is that doing less made me feel like I was somehow admitting weakness. But third, and probably the most importantly, I had a deep seated fear that doing less would mean that I was no longer worthy. And in that sense, doing less felt extremely unsafe. I was so conditioned to do more, to achieve more, to overachieve, to go above and beyond, that doing less just felt like, what would I do? I had no idea where to start. But there came a point in my life where my body would no longer let me push through the pain. In order to heal from my trauma and repair my relationship with my body, I had to learn how to do less or face the consequences of potentially permanent damage to my nervous system. Um, for me, doing less meant realizing that just because I can endure something, just because I can endure pain, does not mean that I have to. And repeat that again. Just because I can endure this pain does not mean that I have to. For a lot of people who have trauma, we have sometimes really high tolerances for pain, really high tolerances for enduring things that other people maybe haven't. And just realizing that there's a separation between, okay, I can tolerate it, but do I have to? Do I have to choose this for myself? Was a turning point for me. So instead, I started learning to listen to my body and learning to affirm my own needs and then begin practice acting on those needs. What I learned in this process was that doing less is actually more of a practice of self compassion. It meant choosing to listen to myself and acting with self trust instead of plowing through whatever I was feeling in order to meet the kind of absolute conditions by those set around me. Ultimately, learning how to do less gave me a sense of my own enough. It helped me learn that my sense of enough was not actually determined by anyone else except for me. And this sense of enough or enoughness gave me the space to repair my relationship with my body and also kind of just get back in the driver's seat of my life after trauma. So, as a dance and healing movement teacher who specializes in helping people reconnect with their bodies after trauma, I have to remind my students all the time that it's okay to take breaks and attend to their needs in real time. Um, I don't mind repeating myself because once this concept finally clicks, my students are able to start moving with their bodies instead of working against themselves. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time for people to trust doing less, especially if you've been conditioned your whole life to keep going and going and doing more and more. So, as I've hopefully demonstrated with my story, there can be a lot of shame attached to doing less. It's not that simple as just saying, oh, okay, well, I'm ready. I'm going to start doing less right now. And it can be incredibly difficult to tap out early, right? It can be really difficult to not finish that set, not finish those reps, not finish the practice, to step away uh, and just rest. And believe me, I have felt a lot of that shame before. So your students and clients may be really, really afraid to look lazy or weak or incapable if they do less than what you ask. So, what can you do to help? Uh, Here are 4 tips that I use in my teaching practice that you can implement immediately. And they really help create space for your students to make choices for themselves. So, tip number 1, create psychological safety around doing less. So let your clients and students know that listening to the body is valid and that they have full permission to attend to their needs during your session or class or workout. Um, Part of this is also letting them know that there's no judgment for walking out of the room. There's no judgment for leaving the space and coming back. Um, Reminding folks that there is safety when they take care of themselves is a really huge step to giving that safety so that they actually take those steps. Tip number 2, offer different verbal and nonverbal options to communicate and have your clients and students practice using them. So, as an example, using a little timeout symbol to call for a break can be a really effective tool so that it's a communication that they can use to direct to you and that you can use to direct to them. It's also helpful for people who have complex trauma and struggle with communication. Sometimes people have something called selective mutism, where under stress, and especially if there is maybe a sense of needing to appease somebody or not disrupt things, people lose their words. And I'll raise my hand, like I struggle with this too. So having nonverbal options to communicate can be really, really helpful for trauma-informed practitioners. Tip number 3, model doing less. Be an example. Do the variations for lower impact, right? Acknowledge your own needs when you're holding space. Show that it's okay to practice self-compassion. This is something that I do quite often because I do like to be transparent with like my mental health, and sometimes I get distracted. I have, ADD, and sometimes that comes up when I'm teaching. So modeling doing less so that I can take care of my brain is how I do this in my practice. And honestly, it creates more trust and sort of that sense of like, well, I see you doing this. I feel like I can do it too. And tip number 4, incorporate somatic techniques into your practice so your students and clients can learn to connect with their bodies and regulate their nervous systems. This has kind of a twofold effect, right? They're getting to deepen their knowledge of self, but these somatic practices can also help them be more regulated and grounded and present for your time together. When we regulate the nervous system, our executive function can go up, meaning that it's easier to learn new things and be creative and be present and engaged. And ultimately, as teachers and healers, that's what we want, right? We want our students to be, or our clients to be fully present instead of in their traumas, in their triggers, and acting from that space. So, just being honest from experience, your students and clients may really, really struggle with this concept of listening to their bodies, especially listening to their bodies in a non-judgmental way. It may feel new and really scary, but here is a quick and effective somatic technique that you can use with them to practice this really life-changing skill. So the first step is to check in with your clients or your students about how they are feeling in this moment. So keeping it a wide net here of like what feelings, thoughts, sensations, anything you might notice in this moment, just take a moment for yourself and loosely gather that information, right? We're trying to keep a energy of curiosity and non-judgment. We're just trying to record and observe what we're feeling. Now, your students and clients do not have to share this information with you, right? I want to just make that clear. They're under no obligation to tell you like, wow, I'm feeling really anxious and my heart rate is doing this and that. But if there is space for them to share, if you do invite them to share, that's totally fine too, but they don't have to in order for this technique to work. What's more important is that they notice it for themselves. Next, the step is to get consent, right, to practice a breathwork technique. And this technique is something I call bubble magic. It is one of my trauma-informed somatic techniques that I use regularly, both in my practice and in my day-to-day life. And this technique is very, very simple. Like even kids can do it, but it requires a little bit of imagination. And you might feel a tiny bit silly, but I promise it's worth it. So this is what the technique looks like. So together with your student or client, go ahead and first grab your imaginary bubble wand. Looks like this. Next, we're going to blow a big bubble. Use a deep, long exhale to blow that bubble instead of like a short burst. Focusing on blowing that bubble so that it fills the whole space. You can invite them to imagine the color, the shape, and even the texture of this bubble. Keep doing this yourself as you also offer these cues of what does your bubble look like? Can you imagine it filling the space? And do your very best to just stay with the experience. Thoughts might come up, and that's okay, but we're just going to try to come back and return to this. For 3 to 5 rounds of breath, or until the person feels satisfied. So after you finish that technique, we're going to do another check-in. We're going to check in again with our students and clients and see, now, how are you feeling? What feelings, thoughts, or sensations are now present in your body, mind, and spirit? Is there any new information that you gathered from your body? Is there anything that you learned from this practice? And you might get the answer of, I have no idea how I feel, right? You might get answers like, I feel numb. I still don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling. I don't know if I'm doing it right or wrong. And this is where we just need to remind folks, it's okay if you don't feel something, right? It's the practice of doing it. It's the practice of asking, listening, and then just like coming back. That is really going to inform how you can listen to your body and then attend to your needs in real time. So after you've checked in again with your student or client, you can invite them to now attend to their needs in real time, right? After this practice, their nervous system might be a little bit regulated, and the invitation is open for them to attend to their needs, to exercise this skill. They may grab some water, grab a snack, or even close their eyes and rest for a moment, right? You can offer these things, but it's really important to put the choice in the hands of your students. So for more techniques like bubble magic, to incorporate in your practice, I do have a toolkit of 5 techniques that I use all the time for my students. And you can grab them, boop, here at the link below. And again, these are just my top 5 like most essential, most effective crowd favorite techniques that really help people regulate their nervous system so that they can feel better in their bodies after trauma. I hope these tips and techniques help you better support your students and your clients by creating that space to do less. Let me know what you think of this video, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.